Hi there. So here we are. It is January 8th, 2024. We are over a week into this new year now. And I'm curious, did you set any New Year's resolutions, or maybe you just call them goals for the year? And how is that going for you? You know, it's an interesting time of year where a lot of people really want a fresh start and they start making resolutions and goals to do better in the new year. And I think that can be a really great thing to do. I like to do that myself. But so many people break those New Year's resolutions within the first week, right, of setting those intentions for the year. And that it's actually become kind of this cultural phenomenon, I guess, of people failing, or you're setting and failing to keep those New Year's resolutions. And for that reason, New Year's resolutions can get kind of a bad rap, right? About do we really need to be setting resolutions? Are we setting ourselves up for failure? Well, I want to explore that by looking at the role of our nervous system in keeping and setting goals, because again, I think it's a great thing to take some time at the beginning of each year and just think about what you want to have happen this year, what you want to maybe shift for yourself. And I like to think of it as setting intentions for the year. And yet, we often focus on things that will improve our life, like eating better or exercising more, getting healthier. And yeah, it can be a struggle to actually see those things shift, and we can stay kind of stuck right in a place of not seeing the fruit of our goals and our intentions to do better. But if we understand the role of the nervous system and how it's actually impacting our ability to move forward, I think you'll understand why so many people, maybe you included, struggle with setting and reaching some of your goals. So, if you think about your nervous system, as I have said many times, the job of our nervous system is to keep you safe, right? It's there to help you stay safe, out of danger, in a place of feeling that your life is safe and you're okay. And often, the nervous system relies on some automatic reactions to do that. So, when our fight or flight part of our nervous system kicks in, for example, we need that to be an automatic reaction. If you're hiking out in the woods and all of a sudden a big grizzly bear rears up in front of you, you don't have time to start planning and reasoning and thinking about, all of your options and creating a four-step plan to get out of that situation, right? Your body just reacts. You start running, or you maybe freeze, right? With that freeze response where we feel too overwhelmed to take action. And that's part of what happens when we have goals that we're trying to set, and yet we find we're struggling, whether it's this time of year or really any time, to move forward on those intentions we have for eating better, working out more, or just whatever you might have intended for yourself in terms of creating new goals and boundaries around your health. So, if we think about that part of our nervous system that's keeping us safe, how is that showing up when we're just trying to eat better or maybe get a little more exercise? Well, if we think about some of those things, like eating better, for example, if we start to shift the way we're eating, that feels new and different for our nervous system. That can feel really scary to the body at some times. And the other part of that is we often use some of these unhealthy, uh, different activities like eating, or, maybe it's watching too much Netflix, or whatever it is for you, drinking too much coffee, right? We do these things because these are often the coping mechanisms that we have put in place to help our body to deal with the stress and the overwhelm that we might be experiencing on a day-to-day basis. So imagine this. Imagine you decide it's January 1st. You really know you can eat a little bit better. You make an intention to do that, cutting out sugar maybe, or processed foods. And yet you get into the first week of this year and things are stressful. You have a lot of projects coming up at work. There's a lot going on. And then you find yourself in the kitchen in the evening, reaching for the chocolate, reaching for the carbs, maybe sitting in front of the TV, binging on Netflix, and feeling really terrible about yourself because you wanted so much to do better with your eating habits. And yet here you are and you're struggling with those same behaviors that have kept you stuck for so long. Well, if we explore that from that nervous system perspective, we can understand that whenever we feel overwhelmed, when we're stressed, we're feeling something in our body, right? We might feel that sense of anxiety, like pressure on the chest or tension that we carry in the shoulders or abdomen or different areas of the body. And if we don't have healthier ways of, number one, recognizing those patterns, but also healthier mechanisms, coping mechanisms, if you will, for moving through that stress response and out of overwhelm, then we go right back to those behaviors that we've used in the past to actually keep us safe and to feel like we're okay in our body. And so understanding that I think can be really powerful because we often, again, set intentions, we plan to do better, and then we give in to some of these unhealthy coping mechanisms. And then we feel really terrible, right? We may feel shame, we may feel guilty, we may start losing trust in ourselves. And then it becomes this vicious cycle. But when we understand that really our nervous system, our body is doing exactly what it should be doing, what it's meant to do in order to keep us in that place of feeling safe, of feeling protected by bringing in these coping mechanisms that actually provide that sense of safety. And we can understand those are actually serving us in some way. And that's why we go back to them. So, as we begin to understand what our nervous system is doing to keep us safe, we can start to work with the nervous system in order to shift these patterns that are showing up. So, how do we do that? What does that look like? Well, the first thing is to understand what's happening in the body whenever we feel that sense of stress or overwhelm, right? We may feel, again, that pressure in the chest or tension in the shoulders or different areas of our body that are a reaction to that sense of stress we're feeling. And there's a sense of discomfort there, right? I have shared with many of you before about how I went through a divorce about 5 years ago. And I found myself at that time putting my kids to bed in the evening. And then I was in the kitchen with a jar of peanut butter and a bag of chocolate chips and just eating. And I knew that I really wasn't hungry. I knew I didn't want to be doing this, but it was like I felt really out of control with it. And at that time, this is when I first started working with my nervous system, bringing in some somatic tools, experiencing what I was feeling in my body. I worked with a coach who helped me to feel my feelings, right? And I recognized that what I was feeling wasn't a true hunger. I wasn't truly hungry. There wasn't this sense of hunger that we usually have in, our belly area, that rumbling, gnawing feeling of hunger. But what I was feeling was this pressure on my chest area. I just felt like there was a weight sitting there. And at that time, the only coping mechanism I had to handle that sense of overwhelm was to eat. And I really didn't even recognize what I was feeling. I remember the day when I actually recognize that this isn't hunger at all. I'm feeling this anxiety, and when I eat something, chocolate, that helps me to kind of move past and out of that sense of anxiety and overwhelm, even if it was just very temporary. So the first thing I did was start to connect with my body and what was happening in my body. So then I could bring in some different tools that I teach women that I work with to start to create a felt sense of safety in their body without feeling that overwhelm, and then using these unhealthy coping mechanisms to shift that, right? Instead, I had new tools I could bring in that allowed me to create this sense of safety and support in my body. But the other thing I did was I also recognized that I needed to address and support my nervous system biology, right? And this is something I talk about in terms of resourcing your body, your nervous system, because when we feel a high amount of stress, overwhelm, we can go into these patterns of the nervous system that are where we end up feeling stuck. We feel overwhelmed. We're not moving forward. We can fall into that chronic freeze pattern of low energy, low movement happening in our life in terms of taking the right actions and moving forward. And so, with the nervous system biology, I learned to support my neurotransmitter function. I actually used some amino acid therapy to help shift those eating patterns that worked really well for me, along with the nervous system, just tools that I brought in to support my body. And then I started to look at some of these behaviors that I wanted to change, and looking at them with curiosity instead of judgment. This is so vital because we often bring in that sense of judgment, of shame, of guilt when we find ourselves repeating different behaviors or patterns that we know we want to move past that aren't truly serving us, and yet we feel stuck in those patterns. And so, as we look at these, how do we change these? We want to create a sense of safety instead of any sense of deprivation or scarcity or unsafety. And interestingly, often the approaches that are really popular for shifting the things we want to shift with our health are based on deprivation, scarcity, unsafety. So, for instance, we might set an intention at the beginning of the year to lose weight, right? A really popular intention. And yet, many people approach that by bringing in deprivation, right? They try to cut out foods, they try to eat less, but if the body and the nervous system is sensing that as deprivation, scarcity, and then a feeling of not being safe in the body, the nervous system is going to react to that with, again, that response that is very visceral. It's not something we sit down and plan to do, but we find ourselves reaching for food, right, in order to create that felt sense of safety in the body. So, even something like pushing your body to exercise when your energy is low, that can create that sense of unsafety in the body, too much for the system to handle and to bring that energy into. And we go into collapse, right? We go into that freeze response. So, if you vow to stop using unhealthy activities, which have been your primary coping mechanisms for creating that sense of safety and support in your body, what would happen if you try to cut those cold turkey without introducing new coping skills and new behavior patterns into your life, right? And this is what so many people do when they approach setting new goals for the year. They try to turn over a new leaf and bring in these, different activities and behaviors that are a huge shift for their body and their nervous system, and it feels overwhelming. And this is why we end up going back to those same old patterns that have kept us safe, that have kept us from feeling deprived, that kept us from feeling that there's scarcity. And we want to shift that instead to uh, thinking into how can we bring in new mechanisms, new coping skills, if you will, new tools to help support your nervous system, to help your body feel safe, to recognize when your body is ready to shift and to change and move forward, and when we need to step back and bring in just more safety, more support, more relaxation. So we're well resourced in our nervous system. So I hope that this has helped you to understand a little bit of why maybe you struggled in the past with making positive changes and sticking with them, and how instead of approaching that from now on with a sense of trying to make too many changes at once, trying to change things that feel too overwhelming to you, you can start with small steps and begin to bring in that sense of safety for your nervous system by number one, learning new tools that create a sense of safety in your body. Number two, resourcing your nervous system patterns and biology as well, so that you're bringing in the nutrient support, the amino acid support, potentially that neurotransmitter support that can help you to resource your system. And then you'll be in a place where number three, you can start looking at changing behaviors and patterns that you want to shift and bringing in those new habits and lifestyle patterns that will really help you move forward. So I hope that's helpful for you. If you have set some intentions for 2024 and you've already kind of fallen off that bandwagon, don't beat yourself up over it. Just understand how your nervous system reaction is playing out in that pattern, and then recognize what you need to shift in order to bring in those changes slowly and get back on track. You can do this. 2024 is going to be a great year for you. I'm believing that, and I look forward to supporting you.